What is a 1 in a million thing that happened to you that will never happen again? I don't know if it is 1 in a million, but my wife started leaking amniotic fluid at 21 weeks. They told us there was nothing they could do for the baby. We were so anguished at the thought of losing him, the fluid was very low and she was constantly leaking. They wouldn't even admit us to a hospital until she was 23 weeks, it was about 10 days out. It was the longest 10 days of our life, we were going to the doctor constantly just for them to monitor and get a sonogram. The day before she hits 23 weeks my wife says she doesn't feel like she is leaking anymore, our fear is that she has ran out of amniotic fluid. On the morning of 23 weeks we go to the doctor and get a sonogram. The plan all along was as soon as we hit 23 weeks, we go to the doctor's office to confirm fluid level, and then they were going to send us to the hospital straight from there. Somehow the amniotic sac that was ruptured has sealed. To everyone's surprise, the fluid was back to normal range. We are all in shock. The doctor tells us to just take it easy and we can head home. My wife delivers our son at full term with no health issues. Everyone at the hospital tells us how lucky we are to have the amniotic sac seal. After the birth the doctor tells me that in the 40+ years of delivering babies, he could count the number of times on one hand that he has seen amniotic sac ruptures heal. I don't know the odds, but I do know my wife and I are incredibly lucky to have our little man. He is 10 months old today as well. Same thing happened to me at 27 weeks, but my water ended up breaking at 28 weeks. I had went to the hospital and OB'd 3 times in the 27th week telling them something wasn't right and fluid was leaking. They acted like it was all in my head or I was just randomly peeing on myself. They never checked fluid levels or did anything. After my water broke, they were shocked like surprise Pikachu face. Your story brought me back to my pregnancy with my second child. It wasn't an amniotic fluid issue, rather placenta previa. I went for an ultrasound at 6 weeks and they failed to warn me. I saw a different doctor in the practice at 10 weeks, she didn't have a copy of the original ultrasound, but was insistent that I go for a more intensive ultrasound at the hospital since I was high risk. I went for the ultrasound and the tech said that the doctor would call me to let me know if there was anything I needed to know. At 13 weeks I got a panicked call from one of the nurses at the OB practice, I had placenta previa. I was instructed not to have sex because I was likely going to lose the baby if I did. At that point we had had sex more than 50 times since the first ultrasound. Alarmed they requested that I go for another ultrasound immediately, everything was fine, but there was placenta previa. At my 17-week ultrasound, the placenta previa had magically cleared itself up. With as many "your baby could be dead" scares as we had with that pregnancy I knew she'd be a tough little cookie. 5 years down the road, she is a total spitfire. My placenta was low-lying as well, it's actually pretty common for it to be lower than ideal but move out of the way as your uterus expands. Thank you, that's as good information to know and likely what really happened. At the time, I was still in my young, trusting phase, and wholly believed them when they said, you have placenta previa, your placenta is lying directly over your cervix, and your baby is at risk. Oh, don't get me wrong, a previa is a good reason for being put on pelvic rest just to be safe, although let's be honest I feel like most penises aren't at that great a risk of accidentally spearing all way up through your cervix into the placenta. And a true previa at the time of labor means the only safe delivery is a C-section, but at 10 weeks you gotta remember that your uterus really isn't that big yet, compared to the watermelon-sized thing it will become. If you imagine your uterus as a balloon that keeps expanding till it reaches its full capacity around 40 weeks, if you made a mark on a balloon when it was only blown up like a third of the way, and then kept blowing, that mark would likely move up from where it had originally been. If that visual makes sense. Absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time to fully explain the nuisance of the condition. Thank you. Edited to add, it was going to be a second cesarean section, which was probably why they didn't even bother to explain that component. They were the type of practice that couldn't be bothered with anything non-essential. Was at Dave & Buster's for a friend's wedding reception probably 10 or so years ago. I wanted to play skee-ball. I'm not really good or anything, just liked playing and their machines were in really nice shape. Get $5 in tokens, and the very first game one got a bunch of 100s and ended up beating the score to win the jackpot. I had like 860 points or something. Flashing lights, siren going off, everyone looking at me. It takes about 5 minutes for all the tickets to spit out of the machine. It was a giant pile on the floor. Meanwhile, I just wanted to play some skee-ball. It finishes and the teenager minding the counter climbs up to the top and resets the jackpot counter. I put in another token and wham! Did it again. Bunch of 100s. Another jackpot, much less this time. The kid working gives me this look like I cheated. You can't play anymore. I gave all the tickets to my friend's daughter and she went on a shopping spree. As many rubber balls and plastic trinkets to last her a lifetime. When I was younger, the first time I had ever been to Dave & Buster's, I was doing like some electronic fishbowl plinko and I got the 2,500 ticket jackpot first try. It was a luck game but still. I ended up getting a very soft and big stuffed animal. I actually still have it. Well, now I want to see the stuffed animal. Me too.